Did you miss me? Well, I'm back today to play Pokemon Crystal with both Granbull and Clefable to see which normal type is better in a solo challenge. I've said this before in my videos, but normal types really didn't impress me when I was a kid. I think this is largely because my first Pokemon game was Yellow version, and Brock really convinced you that normal type Pokemon and normal type moves were just not worth the investment. Plus, I think it's fair to note that Generation 1 has a bias towards the incredibly powerful Psychic type, the Water type that's just kind of available everywhere and has fantastic accurate moves like Surf, and finally the Grass type, or some bugs, which have great sleep-inducing moves because that status condition was absolutely broken. Also as a kid, I chose all of my moves based on which name sounded coolest. Razor Leaf, Hydro Pump, and Fire Blast just seem a lot cooler than moves like Slam, Double Edge, or Takedown. And when Generation 2 came out, I didn't look at the move Return and go, that sounds like it's going to be really powerful. Well, I could not have been more wrong. Back in December, my penultimate Crystal video of the year was Ursaring versus Donphan, and in that video, Ursaring set a record for the fastest time yet that I have achieved in Pokemon Crystal. I think with a little bit more refinements, it easily could have got under 1 hour and 10 minutes, which is something I thought was basically impossible a year or two ago. Now in 2024, I'm going to be making some changes to how I play these challenges in Crystal version. I'm making them to aid with precision so that my results will be more accurate. Just note that these changes will bias the results towards all of the runs done starting now. Don't worry, because I love doing these solo challenges, I'm sure I'll replay all of the Pokemon I've ranked so far at some point on stream in the future. So a lot has changed from the past. I have realized that normal types are one of the best types in the game, if not the best type. I've dramatically improved my play, achieving results that I before thought impossible, and now have updated my methodology so that these results can be more accurate. With all of these things in place, just how good are these two fast growth rate normal types going to be? Well, let's find out. If you don't watch a lot of my content, these are the rules. Check them out in the description later on if you forget during the challenge. Let's start things off with Clefable. For base stats, it has 95 HP, 70 attack, 73 defense, 85 special attack, 90 special defense, and 60 speed. Overall, this base stat distribution is fairly balanced. It has a bias towards its special stats, but its attacking stats are definitely not bad. It certainly lacks speed, but that said, I am going to get a badge boost for my speed, as well as stat experience, which the opponents won't have access to, so I'm pretty sure Clefable is only going to be slower than a few key threats. As a stone evolution, it doesn't learn any new moves through level up, so at the beginning of the game it's going to be stuck with Sing, Double Slap, Metronome, and Moonlight, and this last move deserves some explanation. As it was introduced in Generation 2, Moonlight utilizes the day and night mechanics to restore the user's HP based on the time of day. I generally don't play my challenges during the night because I just don't like its aesthetics quite as much, but today with Clefable I am going to be playing at night so that Moonlight will restore more HP. When it's not nighttime, Moonlight will restore 1/4 of the Pokemon's total HP. This changes if Sunlight is on the field to half of the Pokemon's HP. If you feel like this doesn't make sense because Sunny Day and Moonlight seem like they would be polar opposites, well, the direct Japanese translation of Sunny Day is Clear Sky, and that makes a lot more sense with Moonlight. If there's another weather effect on the field, like a sandstorm or rain, then Moonlight will restore 1/3. The thing about all this is that if the time of day is nighttime, then it will restore twice these amounts. So if there's no weather, it's going to restore half, and if there is sunlight, it will restore the entire Pokemon's health. I will admit now, before playing my first Clefable run, I had no idea that this was the effect that Sunny Day had on Moonlight, so I am not going to be going for any kind of Sunny Day synergy in this playthrough. For the early game, I'm mostly going to be relying on Double Slap, which is a same type attack bonus normal type move. It's frustrating that it has 85 accuracy, but it's even more frustrating that it only has 10 PP. Luckily for me, I don't really think Clefable is going to need to go to the Pokemon Center very much or knock out many opposing Pokemon. I'm basically heading straight for Falkner. While I do that, let's talk about Clefable's TM and HM learn set, because it is very expansive. This thing basically learns every single good move in Generation 2. It gets all 3 tutor moves, moves, all 3 of the elemental punches, Shadow Ball, Mud Slap, just to make a Gligar really frustrated. Of course, it gets Iron Tail, Solar Beam to pair with Sunny Day, Rollout, and of course 2 of the 3 primary normal type moves, Headbutt and Return. Unfortunately, the Pokemon that evolves with a Moonstone and learns the move Moonlight cannot learn Swift, which has an animation based on stars. I'm not sure why. This one's kind of frustrating to me, especially because Clefable could learn it by TM right after defeating Faulkner, but for now I'm gonna have to wait until I defeat Bugsy and the rival in Azalea Town to get access to a better attacking move. That said, in a pinch, I can use Metronome, although I will have you know that it can select Self-Destruct and Explosion, which of course is an instant loss in a solo challenge. Okay, so with all that preamble out of the way, let's face Faulkner. I'll start this off by complaining about my PP because I only have 3 uses of Double Slap left. I want to save that direct damage for the Pidgeotto. Let's use Metronome now and see if I can take out the Pidgey quickly. Turn 1 I fail Disable, then I roll Hypnosis which misses, Reversal does very little damage, and then I paralyze Faulkner's lead with Thunder Wave. Okay, things are not off to a good start, but on the 5th turn, Metronome rolls Icy Wind, and that's enough to get the knockout. I'm hoping that I can do enough damage with Double Slap, which by the way does not have to hit just 2 times every turn. It can hit up to 5 times, which is what happens with my first use. That is really lucky. Also, whenever my health drops around half, I can just use Moonlight to heal, so there's basically no way for me to lose here unless I run out of PP, or perhaps use Self-Destruct or Explosion with Metronome. But in this case, that doesn't happen. My second Double Slap gets a critical hit, so I do a little bit more damage, taking the Pidgeotto down to red health. This allows my final use of the move to knock it out, and with that, Clefable has earned itself the first badge. Alright, Clefable's pretty good, right? You're probably thinking that it is going to have no problem defeating Crystal. Well, yeah, that's true, but Granbull, to me at least, seems even better. For base stats, it has 90 HP, 120 attack, 75 defense, 60 special attack and special defense, and 45 speed. The reason these stats scream that Granbull is going to perform better is because it's far more focused. It has a lot of HP, decent defense, and then a massive attack stat, which is great for a normal type, because in Generation 1, 2, and 3, all normal type moves deal physical damage. The one worrying thing about Granbull is the fact that its speed is very low, and it doesn't have much special defense. Red's team consists of 5 special attackers, and there's going to be no way to boost my special defense without a move like Amnesia. Making this even worse is the fact that there is a glitch with the Glacier badge, so my special defense isn't going to get a badge boost. However, all of that is far in the future. For now, Granbull should be able to completely crush the early game. Its starting set is a little bit less interesting than Clefable's. It has Tackle, Scary Face, and Tail Whip. At level 8 it gets Charm, and then at 13 it gets Bite, which in Generation 2 deals special damage. Beyond that it learns Lick, Roar, Rage, and Takedown at level 51. I have to say, this level up set is extremely underwhelming. There is a reason I never picked up a Snubbull or a Granbull and put them on my team as a kid. That reason is that these Pokemon are incredibly ugly, but the secondary reason is definitely that their movesets just weren't very good when I caught them. Still, the beauty of normal types is the fact that they get great type coverage through TM and HM, and that is the case for Granbull. It gets almost everything Clefable gets, notably 2 tutor moves are missing, but other than that it has all of the punches. It gets Sludge Bomb in addition, but that's probably not going to be useful just because poison type moves aren't great offensively. After all, I'm sure that Granbull is basically just going to spam Return throughout this entire playthrough once it's doing more damage than Headbutt. Okay, so how will this normal type do against Faulkner? Well, I'm able to 2-shot the first Pidgey using Tackle and move on to the Pidgeotto. To mess his ace up, I go for Charm, lowering its attack by 2 stages so that it deals very little damage to me with each turn of Gust. After that, I can use Tackle, and I easily get the 3-shot. Honestly, because I had a berry, I really didn't need to go for Charm. I should have just gone for Tackle right away. With Faulkner defeated, I have earned myself the Zephyr badge and the TM for Mud Slap, which of course Granbull can learn. But the more important thing that this badge gives me is a 12.5% boost to my attack stat. As I pass through Union Cave, I want to mention the fact that I have modded the random spinners so that they can't catch me. In the case of Hiker Russell here, his original spinning motion is truly random, so there's no way to play well and always consistently dodge him. However, they are optional trainers, and I could do a strategy like saving and then resetting until I get by them, but that wastes time and it's kind of sloppy. It artificially bloats the time of the run, and it overall just makes things less clean for all of us when comparing Pokemon. I can make it through all of Union Cave with the Repel that I picked up just before it, so there's no wild encounters here, giving one Pokemon an advantage over the other. In Azalea Town, I make sure to stop by the marsh to pick up repels as well as escape ropes, and then I head into Slowpoke Well to beat up some rockets. By this time, my moveset is getting quite built out: Tackle, Mudslap, Bite, and Charm. I've kept this last move just because sometimes it can be useful against Bugsy and Whitney and their moves like Fury Cutter or Rollout. After defeating all the rockets, my Granbull is only level 14. Now I should mention that the fast growth rate, unlike its name suggests, is not actually the fastest to level up in the early game. It starts being the fastest growth rate of all of the growth rates in the game once my Pokemon reaches level 30. What that means is that at this point, Granbull is leveling up a little bit slower than maybe I would like. And as a consequence, by the time I'm ready to face Bugsy, I am only level 15. Still, 120 base attack is a lot, and I'm hoping that it will carry me through this battle. Against Bugsy's Cocoon Pokemon, I can use Bite. This is because it's a special move, so their Hardens will do nothing to help them survive. The only fear that I have here is if Poison Sting causes the status condition, because that little bit of chip damage really stacks up when Scyther is using Fury Cutter. And unfortunately for Granbull, it does get poisoned before knocking the Kakuna out. Okay, Scyther, you better not ruin my day. And it doesn't, because it chooses Quick Attack. Alright, it did do a decent amount of damage, and Poison is stacking up, but the fact that it didn't go for Fury Cutter right away is, I think, what I'm going to need to knock it out. Granbull just barely survives poison damage, and its last Quick Attack uses Tackle, it doesn't miss, and Bugsy's Ace faints. But that battle isn't the most difficult one in Azalea Town. In all of my challenges, I go up against the rival when he has the team that is strongest against the Pokemon that I'm doing a solo challenge with. So today, he is going to have Bayleaf as his ace. His lead is Ghastly, which takes super effective damage from Bite, and despite Granbull's lower special attack, it still does enough to one-shot. Zubat is next. I use Tackle to knock it out over 2 turns, taking only minimal damage, and then he sends in his ace. Now, the reason Bayleaf is better than all of the other starters here is because it knows the move Razor Leaf, which of course is a same type attack bonus move. It has 55 base power and a high critical hit rate. I should also mention that the grass type has 1 more speed than Granbull, so it moves first, sets up Reflect, and takes so little damage from Tackle. That made me realize that I should be using Bite instead, but Bayleaf's next Razor Leaf crits, taking me down to half. Also, I am not going to be able to leverage Bite's flinch chance because I'm moving second. Bayleaf poisons Granbull, it takes chip damage, and the next Razor Leaf once again crits, causing my first reset. I figured that the time to backtrack to an earlier route and train to get 29 speed would just take too long, so I tried the fight again right away. Once again, Bayleaf sets up Reflect, Tackle is doing very little damage, so I go for Bite again, this time getting a lucky critical hit. Granbull recovers some health with its Berry, Razor Leaf doesn't crit, I take the Bayleaf down to red health, and then Razor Leaf misses, because yes, this move only has 95% accuracy. Because of that luck alone, Granbull gets 1 final hit in, and the Bayleaf faints. For Clefable, the path through this section of the game is very similar. I'll take this time to mention that the Clefable run was not performed under my regular circumstances. Normally when I do first attempts, I'm not reading chat, I'm generally not streaming, I do these things behind the scenes, but this one specifically was played as part of a community event that I am hosting for my Patreon supporters as well as my YouTube members. I'm going to be hosting these events once a month throughout the year, and basically it's just a time for us all to sit down and play through the game all with the same Pokemon and see how it goes. If you're competitive like me, you can show up and try and do your absolute best, but if you're a little bit less competitive or want to try some meme strats, that's also fine. For example, Peep, who manages my credit sequence and also has the Clefable avatar. I really should have nicknamed my Clefable Peep, by the way. I feel very bad that I didn't. Anyways, he showed up and played Clefable using metronome only. Yeah, it was a really painful experience for all of us, because once everyone else had finished the game, we all switched over to cheering him on. If you're interested in this kind of event, consider supporting the channel. I really do appreciate it. The next one we're going to be doing is on February 20th, and we're playing through Pokemon Yellow with only a Roselia. Now back to the run. With the rockets cleared out of Slowpoke well, I have to defeat Bugsy. Clefable is level 15, just like Granbull was for this fight, but it has a little bit more experience. That said, I am going to have to defeat him using Double Slap. I have unlearned Metronome at this point, just because I really don't accidentally want to blow myself up. Mirroring Granbull, Clefable gets poisoned before the Scyther comes in. But in this case, it goes for Fury Cutter right away, and stacking up with poison damage, it's just a little bit too much despite getting a critical hit, and Clefable goes down. In the next battle, I use Sing, which I really didn't want to do, but I put the Kakuna to sleep just so it can't poison me with Poison Sting. After that, I move on to the Scyther without the status condition, and so that it doesn't stack up Fury Cutter, I go for Sing right away. By the way, in the last fight, I probably should have tried to go for Sing to break its combo. That might have given me the possibility of winning. But in the moment, the game goes really quickly, and I missed that option. I'm glad that I realized that I could do this by my second time facing him, because it gives Clefable an easy victory. And I can continue utilizing Sing against the rival. In this case, I don't have Bite, so I have to use Mud Slap on the Ghastly. This can be risky if it uses Hypnosis and then spams Spite, lowering Mud Slap's PP. After all, it has a total of 10 uses, so after just 2 or 3 Spites, you might run out, and in that case, I would be unable to knock the Ghost type out until getting to Struggle. That worst case scenario doesn't play out here. I move on to the Zubat, finishing it easily, and then against the Bayleaf, I just don't want to get hit by Growl, have it set up Reflect, or poison me with its powder. So I can once again utilize Sing, one of the least accurate moves in the game, but don't worry, it is still more reliable than Dynamic Punch. It puts the Bayleaf to sleep, but it wakes up fairly soon. Granted, Clefable's higher special defense is an advantage here because Razorleaf just isn't hitting nearly as hard. I put the Grass type back to sleep, chip away with Double Slap, and take the victory. Okay, so these two had fairly similar Azalea Towns, one reset for both of them, just in different places. With these challenges behind us, the game is about to get much easier for both Pokemon. In the case of Clefable, while I go through the forest, I can pick up Headbutt, which is a fantastic same type attack bonus move that has base 70 power and a 30% chance to flinch the opponent. But that isn't the move that I'm really looking forward to. I want to get to the Goldenrod department store so that I can buy all 3 of the punches. After all, Clefable's special attack, even without a badge boost, is still 1 point higher than its attack stat. Each one of the TMs is 3,000 Pokédollars, so to ensure that I can buy all of them, I backtrack into Azalea Town after rescuing Farfetch'd, because then I can talk to this guy who will give me the charcoal. This item sells for incredibly high prices, so I can use it in the department store if I don't have enough money. I pick up the TM for Headbutt, teaching it in the place of Double Slap. Honestly, good riddance. After that, I head into the department store where I buy all 3 of the punches, and yes, I did have to sell the charcoal in order to have enough money. I teach Ice Punch in the place of Sing because that move isn't really useful now, and then I teach Fire Punch in the place of Mud Slap because this move also covers the Magnemite line, and that's essentially the only reason that I keep Mud Slap for an extended period of time. After that, I do my regular errands like clearing out the underground so that there's no trainers I have to battle here later in the game. Also, it gives me an opportunity to pick up the coin case so that I can buy myself an Abra in the game corner. This thing is a fantastic field move user. It can learn both Teleport and Flash, and the first of these 2 moves saves so much time navigating the overworld. I journey north towards the national park, picking up Kenya along the way, and here I'll mention that the fact that it's nighttime here means I could potentially fight the policeman that's on this route. When I play all my challenges during the day, this is a trainer that I can never battle, restricting the amount of total experience available to some Pokemon. As a result, in all future videos on my channel, this route specifically, Goldenrod City, and the route just prior to it will all be set to nighttime by default. I figure this is a fair way to give Pokemon access to more training, as well as having the majority of my footage be filmed during the day so that it looks the way that I want it to. Of course, the little modder in me really says, well, maybe I should just change the colors at nighttime so it looks like it's day, but I think that would be confusing for viewers, so I'm not going to do that to try to respect the original aesthetic of the game. After all, the footage needs to visually communicate what's going on in the game to all of you, and if it isn't doing this, then questions will arise and I'm going to have to answer a lot of comments. After talking to Floria, I teleport back to Goldenrod City and head into the gym. Defeating Whitney is going to give both of these Pokemon a major advantage because all normal type moves will get a 12.5% boost to their damage. This modifier is going to be represented by the effective power that you can see in the top left of the screen. I should also mention that this badge will also boost my Pokemon's speed stat by 12.5%, which will be very useful for these slow Pokemon. And I'm not going to slow down this narration anymore, so now let's battle Whitney. Up first is Clefairy. I go for Headbutt, doing more than half. It uses Metronome, selecting Recover, and I thought that this hadn't healed enough health to save it, but it did. However, my next Headbutt just causes a flinch, and I finish it off for free. Clefable levels up. Miltank is next. It goes for Rollout, which is a bit scary because it is faster. That means Headbutt can't break its combo with a flinch. However, Clefable looks like it's doing about a third every turn. Maybe slightly less. As Rollout hits for a third time, it takes Clefable down to orange health, and I definitely won't survive another hit. So the question is, do I have enough damage? And Clefable gets a critical hit, and I normally would have said that we would never know, but we do because I record all of my playthroughs into RBY XP Router, which is a software that can show me all of the damage ranges for every single fight based on my exact Pokemon with its stat experience, DVs, everything set exactly the way it was in the game when I played it. Using Headbutt, Clefable had a 27.3% chance to knock the Miltank out. Each Headbutt hit does between 29 and 35% damage at level 22. Please note that when I mention the percentage to knockout, it always includes things like accuracy as well as critical hits. Now that battle finished a while ago, but I'm going to continue rambling about it just for a little bit because I think it's useful for the secondary playthroughs, which I'm going to do later in the video. In Pokemon games, the way that the damage calculation works, there are a lot of floor functions which essentially truncate off the decimal value before running the next step of the calculation. Because of this, there are things that I call damage rounding thresholds, and whenever you go over one of them, your damage increases non-linearly. For example, just one level higher at 23, Clefable has a guaranteed 3 hit with Headbutt. The consequence of this is that for my second playthrough, I might seriously want to either consider holding on to Sing to break Miltank's combo, or leveling up to 23 to make Headbutt more consistent. Because defeating Whitney is very important. After all, now Headbutt is significantly more powerful. There is a way to make it even better. By backtracking to the first route in the game and talking to Tuscany, she will give me the Pink Bow. This is a held item that increases the power of normal type moves by 10%. That said, I didn't choose to do this after I defeated Faulkner. By the way, she only appears once you have the first badge, so there's no way to pick up the Pink Bow earlier on into the game. Sometimes it makes sense to go back after reaching Ecruteak City. After all, you set your waypoint to the Ecruteak Pokemon Center, and then you can use Abra to teleport all the way back here prior to getting Fly. However, because Clefable's moveset is so fantastic, I don't think I need the Pink Bow right now. I can pick it up once I have access to Fly to save a little bit of time. However, there is also a second Pink Bow available. It's given to you by Marie after you defeat the final Rocket Executive on the floor just under where that battle takes place. But all those choices are a while off. For now, there is much more pressing matters that Clefable needs to deal with. Most specifically, Morty. If you look at my move pool on the right hand side of the screen, you'll see that Hidden Power is a dark type move with 70 base power. This is because in my first playthroughs, I set my Pokemon's DVs to perfect values to give them the best chance in the run possible. My goal is to find the Pokemon's peak performance, so this is how I do it. However, just to make Crystal version a little bit more interesting for all of you and for myself when I'm playing the games, I have banned Hidden Power in first attempts, so this move is not available to me right now. If you're curious why I ban a move like Hidden Power but not another standard standard move like Return? The answer is fairly simple. While Return is very powerful, it asymmetrically benefits normal type of Pokemon, which is interesting from a tier list perspective. Removing Return really undercuts all of the normal types in the game, whereas Hidden Power just flexibly benefits every single Pokemon in the game, with the notable exception of Pokemon that just don't need to use it to get type coverage. Because of that, it is worth noting, if I removed both Hidden Power and Return, that would asymmetrically disadvantage normal types, because I don't really foresee Clefable needing Hidden Power in the second run, unless Morty is absolutely brutal, in which case Hidden Power Dark will be useful. Another consideration around Hidden Power is the fact that it can just be a sort of solve everything button. Well, is Jasmine hard? Okay, Hidden Power Ground. Is Claire and Lance hard? Hidden Power Ice. Maybe you're a grass type and you really need to be able to defeat Charizard and Aerodactyl quickly, so obviously Hidden Power Rock is a good go-to. Return just doesn't function quite as flexibly. While it does do a lot of damage and hit almost everything neutrally, it doesn't have the same sort of flexibility or peak damage. Remember that Hidden Power, when super effective, has an effective power of 140, and that's without badge boosts or the same type attack bonus, or potentially against a Pokemon that has a double weakness to it. So for everyone out there who really doesn't like Return, I completely understand, but I still won't be banning it this year. To ensure that I've leveled up enough for Morty, after all I'm going to have to rely on Ice Punch to defeat him, I go to the Lighthouse first. This is my standard route throughout the game. It just gives me a little bit more experience before teleporting back to Azalea Town. Inside Burn Tower, I have to go up against the rival. His first Pokemon is Haunter. Now it does survive my hit, but it knocks itself out using Curse. In this case, I think that that's a good thing, because I can one-shot the Magnemite with Fire Punch and the Zubat with Ice Punch. Bayleaf just barely survives my hit, but it sets up Reflect and then goes down essentially for free. Clefable has no problems sweeping all of the ghost trainers in Morty's gym, and with them out of the way, it is ready for its 4th gym battle. The Ghost Gym Leader's first 2 Pokemon both know Curse, and it's very important that I one-shot them so that I can survive long enough to knock the Gengar out. I'm holding a Mint Berry to counter its Hypnosis. Also, with the AI's 25% accuracy debuff, Hypnosis only has a 45% chance to hit when Morty uses it. Things don't play out ideally though, because the Haunter survives and hits Curse before going down. Gengar's next. It has 3 more speed when compared with Clefable. By the way, this is also a very fitting matchup. Clefable versus its Shadow, if you subscribe to that theory. The Gengar uses Hypnosis, putting Clefable to sleep and burning my Mint Berry on the first turn. Then Ice Punch doesn't do half, and I take Curse damage. Alright, this is really not good. Luckily Hypnosis misses. I take the Gengar to red health, more Curse damage, and then it puts me back to sleep. Alright, that's really frustrating. The combination of the status condition and Dream Eater is enough to knock Clefable out and give it its second reset. As I get going with my next attempt against Morty, I want to mention another small modification that I have made to the game. Since I am doing a solo challenge, it seems only fair that the opponent knows that I will only be using one Pokemon in battle. If you didn't already know, the AI is making choices based on the current number of Pokemon in your party. So for example, Morty will use the move Mean Look to trap your Pokemon so that you can't switch, only if you have more than one Pokemon in your party. In the past, this fight has been made really easy in a lot of circumstances when Morty just randomly uses Mean Look. As a result of this, I want to make Crystal as hard as possible and also as fair as possible. After all, I am only using one Pokemon, so the AI will always see my total party count as being one Pokemon. That said, if I keep HM users in my party, if I want to black out to keep the experience from the battle, then I will have to let all of those HM users faint. If a scenario happens where the HM user knocks out an enemy Pokemon and gives me the win, or I win the battle because I have HM users in my party, which would be the case if I use Self-Destruct or Explosion, then I'll count that as a loss, because that is how the game determines results when the player has all of their Pokemon blackout. As you've seen, I got a lot luckier in the second battle because the Haunter didn't use Curse. Now, without the status condition, I think I have a better chance against his Gengar. I get unlucky because Hypnosis puts me to sleep, but then my Ice Punch crits, taking Gengar down to red health. It goes for the sleep-inducing move one more time. This one misses, and as a result, I finish off Morty's ace. All that remains is his final Haunter, and while it does deplete Ice Beam's PP using Spite, I can just use Fire Punch to finish it off. And with that, Clefable has defeated its shadow and earned itself the 4th badge. My standard route is now to head west back to Olivine City, where I then use Surf to head across the ocean to defeat Chuck. The reason I do things this way is that the mid-game is just so much faster if you have access to fly. That said, about half the way to the 5th gym, I started to second guess if maybe this wasn't the best choice. After all, I'm in the low 30s, I have a normal type of Pokemon, and it's decently slow. Granted, Chuck's Pokemon are also really slow, so Clefable is faster than both of them. That's encouraging because then I can rely on Headbutt flinches to at least defeat his ace Poliwrath. Plus, Chuck is one of the least consistent trainers in the entire game, so even if I do have a reset or two, eventually I will be able to defeat him. If you watch my Pokemon Yellow series, and let's be real, if you're here on my channel, you definitely do, you'll know that Surge is very inconsistent. Sometimes he can cause random resets, but generally you just fight him and he uses Growl 4 times and you win. Chuck is basically the Johto equivalent. Sometimes he no-scopes Dynamic Punch 4 times in a row and you get so frustrated. Other times he just misses a bunch or uses Mind Reader and then misses with Hypnosis, which is one of the funniest things that can happen in this game. Anyways, let's head into the gym and see how Clefable deals with these fighting types. The answer would be simply with great ease if this was Generation 6 or later, but in this case, Clefable is weak to their moves. And 3 of the trainers in this gym are so difficult that I have commissioned special art for them. The first one is Black Belt Yoshi, who has a Hitmonlee. Luckily I have more than 56 speed, so I can move first and hit it with Headbutt, but it just barely doesn't do enough damage. Hitmonlee uses Double Kick for super effective damage, but Clefable survives with half health. Okay, that's pretty good. Now, the next trainer is Black Belt Lau, who battles you immediately after Black Belt Yoshi. You cannot stop and heal between these fights. This can kind of be scary, not because the Hitmonchan is a particularly good Pokemon, but it can freeze you or paralyze you with its punches, and if that happens, the status condition plus chip damage can cause a defeat. However, Clefable makes it through without issue. The final trainer in the gym that is notable is Black Belt Knob. He's named after the translator for the game, by the way, and the art is based on an image of him that Serena Vale found on Bulbapedia. His team is typically notable because the Machoke knows Rock Slide, which can really mess up flying type Pokemon, especially if you have a 4 times weakness to rock moves, like for instance Delibird. By the way, that was the first Patreon and members event that we hosted, and we decided to go with Clefable as the follow-up just because Delibird is absolutely awful. I got myself in a very sticky situation in that run trying to counter this fighting gym with Hidden Power Psychic, but then Red's Charizard was almost impossible to defeat. If you're curious, the correct Hidden Power choice is Hidden Power Rock. Also, congratulations to Austin, who ended up getting the best time with the Santa Bird. Okay, so after giving Clefable a second Mint Berry, it's now ready to face Chuck. Primeape is first, I go for Headbutt, it does more than half. The fighting type lowers my defense with Leer, and I knock it out. Okay, Poliwrath, please just don't use Dynamic Punch. Well, Headbutt does less than half, which is not exactly what I was expecting, but Poliwrath just misses a Hypnosis, and then it goes for another one, which uses my Mint Berry up, but doesn't prevent a 3rd hit, and as a result, Clefable quickly dispatches the fighting type trainer. Of these 2 Pokemon, that was the harder scenario through that section of the game, because Granbull's move pool really gives it all the tools it needs. Headbutt is going to hit like an absolute truck with 120 base attack, and it also has Bite, which is super effective against Morty. I do spend time going to the department store buying the elemental punches, but I didn't decide to teach any of them to Granbull before I take on Whitney. Clefairy is first, and Headbutt easily one-shots it. Next is Miltank, it outspeeds using Stomp, luckily not flinching me, and Headbutt does about a 3rd. It decides instead of continuing with Stomp, which was dealing decent damage, to go for Rollout, but obviously it's not going to stack up soon enough, so Granbull easily knocks out her ace. The next section of the game occurs in the same order. Kimono Girls, then I head west. Before the lighthouse, I catch myself a Krabby. I'm going to talk about this more when we go on to the subsequent playthroughs, because I have decided to shift away from this HM user. I do think there's a slightly better option available. In the lighthouse, you can see that my moveset consists of Headbutt and Bite, which I mentioned before, and I've also now taught Fire Punch and Ice Punch. If you're wondering why I haven't taught Thunder Punch, which in the past I have said is better than Fire Punch, the reason is just because I need a counter to the Magnemite line. Otherwise, there is some risk because of supersonic as well as paralysis. The rival's Haunter moves first against Granbull, but Bite is able to finish it off, so I take no damage on this turn. Fire Punch one-hits the Magnemite, and from there I use Headbutt to one-shot the Zubat, and then two-hit the Bayleaf. The question now is, will Granbull's lower special attack stat be enough to face Morty with Bite? Honestly, I'm not sure, because 54 is just over half the 101 it has in its attack stat. In this case though, Bite still is doing enough damage to one-shot the Ghastly, so I don't have a curse put on me right away. I'm faster than the first Haunter, allowing me to use Bite against it, and once again another one-hit, so Granbull has made it all the way to the Gengar without a status. It moves first, misses Hypnosis as is typical, Bite does more than half, then its Hypnosis hits but it's too late, I finish Morty's ace off, and with that, Granbull cleans up the final Haunter and earns itself the 4th badge. As I head towards the 5th gym, which in this case is going to be Chuck's, let me mention the play order for this video. Normally in versus videos, I like to play the Pokemon that I think is going to get a faster time first. That's so that when I play the underdog, I have a little bit of extra experience that I can apply to that run. In this case though, I played them in the reverse order. I played Clefable first and then Granbull after. The reason is that I played the community event first, not thinking that I would make the Clefable footage into a video. Then after doing a little bit more research into it, I realized both of these Pokemon have the Fairy Pokemon category, and then I looked into their stats, and the base stat total is very similar, plus they both changed from normal types to Fairy types in Generation 6, so it felt like a pairing that I just couldn't pass up. As a result of this creative process, Granbull is being played second for these first playthroughs. That'll all even out. I will play Granbull first for follow-up playthroughs and then Clefable after. Of course, with his enormous attack stat, it dispatches all the fighting type trainers in the gym, so now let's fight Chuck himself. First is Primeape, I go for Headbutt and get the one-shot. Granbull levels up to 34 and Chuck sends in Poliwrath. My Headbutt does what looks like half, and then the water type uses Hypnosis, which by the way would have gotten me because I forgot to pick up a second Mint Berry. That said, it just misses and I finish Chuck off without incident. With Fly, I grab the Pink Bow, return, and a rare candy before heading to the Lake of Rage. I probably should have taught Thunder Punch in the place of Bite to take out the Gyarados. After all, holding on to the Dark type move isn't even going to help against Will. Its maximum effective power, even with the black glasses, which I don't want to go out of my way to pick up, would be 132. Comparing that with Return, with just the same type attack bonus, there's obviously no contest, especially because Bite is a special move. Plus, I can be using the Pink Bow to boost Return's power even more. So from here, Granbull is essentially just going to be spamming the normal type move, unless the opponent's Pokemon takes 4 times damage from one of my special moves, in which case that's going to be the better option. There'll be other moments when you'll see me use these moves, and that's likely just because I'm trying to use my PP in a really efficient way. The more center trips I prevent, the faster the Pokemon goes. And Granbull is going very fast. By the time it's knocked out the electrodes in the Rocket HQ, there is just over 33 minutes of time on the clock. There used to be a time when anything under 50 minutes in this area was really good for me. Granbull smashes its way through the ice that is Price. Yes, I one-shot every single one of his Pokemon. However, I think I need to play the intro for Jasmine, who's coming up next, because she definitely is the best gym leader in Johto. First is Magnemite. Of course, Fire Punch is the go-to move here. I'm not holding a Paralyzed Cure Berry because I was fairly sure that I was going to one-shot her lead, and I do. Also, you might wonder why I'm not holding the Charcoal, and the reason is because I sold it earlier, and I didn't want to backtrack to Azalea Town to buy another one. Steelix is last. Fire Punch does more than half. Iron Tail does about a third, but in the end it's not enough, and I finish off the Steel-type leader. With her badge, I have now completed my badge boosts, and do note in the bottom left that there is no badge for my special defense. This is due to an awful glitch that impacts it. I would have to get my unboosted special attack over 205 in order to get my special defense boost, but with Granbull's base stats, I don't think that's going to be possible in a realistic amount of time. In the radio tower, Granbull one-shots all of Petrol's Coughings. It has to take like it's time two-shotting the Weezing, but yeah, this battle's not a problem. The rival in the underground is next. I one-shot the Golbat, one-shot the Magnemite, one-shot the Haunter with Bite, which I was surprised by. Then I don't one-shot the Sneasel using Fire Punch. So there is an example of why I should have been spamming Return. After that, Meganium is next. This Pokemon is notoriously known for its defensive capabilities. It has more HP and defensive stats when compared with Sneasel, and of course, Return still has enough damage to take it out. After completing the underground and saving the director, I can use the elevator to go up into the department store to buy vitamins. In the bottom left, you can see the number that my Pokemon can still consume. With my money, I invest in 5 protein as well as 2 calcium. My thought process was that Granbull's speed is kind of irredeemable, so why would I invest in that? After all, I am going to be using Curse in the late game. The final Rocket executives are simple to clean up, and with them out of the way, I can explore Ice Path, grabbing the Nevermelt Ice on my way, and then I head into the final gym to face Claire. Here's how I generally think of this fight. If you're able to one-shot the Dragonair with neutral damage, then you will two-shot the Kingdra when you make it to it. Of course, Granbull is one-shotting the Dragonairs, but when I make it to the Kingdra, I realize just how good this Pokemon is, because Return continues the sweep. Clefable has a different problem in the mid-game when compared with Granbull. While that thing can just spam Return and have decent coverage with all 3 of its slots, I really wanted to keep Moonlight around for recovery. I do love Rest a lot, but going to sleep really isn't fun, and if I can recover half of my health every turn without the status effect, obviously that's much better. I've experienced problems at Red before when my normal type doesn't have a good speed stat. Often the reason these normal types can't make it through the fight is because Rest just takes too many turns to pull off, or the Pokemon is relying on something like Sleep Talk in order to attack at the right possible times, and sometimes that just doesn't line up the way you want it to. Moonlight would give me much more flexibility, but in order to have this move for Red, I can never unlearn it. The move reminder was introduced to the series in Generation 3. Yes, I do know that technically in Pokemon Stadium 2 there is sort of a move reminder. Many of you have mentioned that in the comments, but it doesn't operate by the same rules and it is much more restrictive. Because I can't transfer Pokemon to other games to learn moves for these solo challenges, if I let go of Moonlight, it will be gone forever. By the time I was getting to the end of the Rocket plotline, I really started to feel like Moonlight would just be better if it was Thunder Punch. So I'm really hoping that the recovery move is going to pay off later. Because it won't right now, after all, Price is next. Yeah, it seems like Thunder Punch would be good here. I could use the Magnet with it and hit a little bit harder than with Return. That being said, Price is so bad, of course he's not a problem for Clefable. And following suit, Jasmine is also simple because Clefable has Fire Punch. Like Granbull, Clefable one-hits all of the coughing on Petrol's team. It also freezes the Weezing, which always gets me a little bit excited. The rival in the underground is very straightforward. Here's the thing. Clefable's attack stat is just high enough that when it uses Return with the same type attack bonus, it still hits really hard. Despite being played first, I remember to use the physical move on Sneasel, knocking it out in a single hit. Then he sends in his final Pokemon, Meganium, which I finish off with 2 uses of Return. The lower attack stat does impact the battle against Claire. I didn't really want to go for Return spam here. After all, Ice Punch has a higher effective power, plus I now have the special attack boost, which really makes me want to use special moves with Clefable. All the Dragonairs are a 1-hit with Ice Punch, and the Kingdra is a 2-hit with Return. So both the Pokemon now have the ability to head towards Indigo Plateau, but before I do that, I am going to collect a couple rare candies. The first one is in the Whirl Islands, and I have to navigate a dark cave here without the use of Flash. After all, Sprout Tower is an optional area, and it just wastes time to go there. This rare candy in the Whirl Islands has been one that I've been considering taking out of my standard route. That's just because it seems like of all the candies, it takes the longest to obtain. In this case, from the fly animation outside of the Dragon's Den to the moment that I arrive at my next destination where I originally wanted to go, the time it takes to obtain this rare candy was 34 seconds and 50 frames out of 60. So it's roughly a 35-second time investment. That's a little bit faster than the Power Plant candy in Generation 1, but still overall quite slow. Granted, training in Johto takes forever, so if my Pokemon has to do optional training, I still think that grabbing the candy makes more sense. I'm detail oriented, so let's time out how long it takes to get another candy, the one in Mount Mortar. Intuitively, it always feels like this one is so much faster to obtain, but after running the numbers, it takes 29 seconds and 25 frames. So it's only 5.5 seconds faster than the Whirl Islands candy. And honestly, if I was playing on 1x speed, I think they would both be about the same amount of time, just because I have to go so slowly in the Whirl Islands on 4x speed to make sure that I don't make mistakes in the dark. And let's time out one more candy. This is the one right before Tojo falls. This one, contrasting the other two, is so much faster. It only takes 6 seconds and 54 frames, so roughly 7 seconds. As a result, I think it always makes sense to pick this one up. The rival is technically the last major battle before the league, but honestly, the only thing that can go wrong in this fight is if the Magneton paralyzes you, and because I have Fire Punch, that's just not gonna happen. With that fight out of the way, Clefable is ready for the league. Just so we're at the same point with both Pokemon, let's defeat the rival with Granbull as well. And in this fight, I'm just gonna draw your attention to the fact that I have taught Granbull Shadow Ball in the place of Bite. I think overall this is a much better move. It counters Psychic types, and it also deals physical damage. Plus, it is getting the type-based boost from Morty's badge. With that, the rival's defeated, so now let's see how the Elite Four goes for both of these normal types. Let's start this off with Clefable against Will. For this battle, I'm mostly just going to be spamming Return. As of late, I have really started to realize the reason Pokemon struggle against Will. It is almost always because they don't have enough speed. But in the case of Clefable, it has 106 speed, so it is faster than every single one of Will's Pokemon. While his Executor and his Slowbro are both very tanky and will survive one hit, it almost always doesn't matter just because they're not great offensively. Like, the Slowbro's only attacking moves are Body Slam and Psychic. I don't know why it doesn't have a water move. I guess it can boost its attack with Curse and then hit with Body Slam, but it almost never does that. After that dominant battle against Will, Clefable continues its dominance against Koga. Now, to be fair, Venomoth is a fighting type, but luckily Fire Punch one-hits. Next is Fortress, Fire Punch continues burning away, and Muck goes down to 2 returns. Finally, it's time for Crobat. Now do note that I'm poisoned. Koga has an AI modification that makes him get really trolly if your Pokemon is poisoned, so he's going to try and use things like full restores as well as double team to buy as much time as possible. In this case, the healing item isn't enough, and Clefable knocks his ace out in 2 more hits. If you've been around my channel for any amount of time, you'll know what I'm about to say about the next trainer. Bruno is absolutely terrifying when you are using a normal type. It's a really good thing that they introduced this guy in Generation 2 because there were no good fighting type specialists in Generation 1. In order to prepare for the battle against him, I use all 7 rare candies I have collected to this point to bring Clefable up to level 60. All of the Hitmons have fantastic special defense stats, so I want to use Return against them for physical damage. This allows Clefable to one-hit the Hitmontop, the Hitmonlee, as well as the Hitmonchan after taking a little bit of damage from Mach Punch. But these fighting types are not the ones that I was worried about. The Machamp hits like an absolute truck with Cross Chop. And to make matters worse, this move has a high crit rate. Now, I'm very used to this Machamp surviving a hit from my Pokemon, but in this case, Clefable gets a critical hit and knocks it out in 1 turn. Alright, so that was really lucky. I can just use Ice Punch and finish off his Onix, because obviously this thing is completely trash. Okay, it's time for Karen. This one is usually brutal, and as expected, the Umbreon survives a hit, though Clefable did do more damage than I was expecting. Umbreon uses Sand Attack to lower my accuracy, Clefable misses, and gets hit by Sand Attack again. This is one of the worst ways to start this fight, because now I have to contend with a Vileplume that can use Stun Spore against me, a Gengar that can cause Curse, a Murkrow, which can't really do anything, and a Houndoom that can hit really hard with Flamethrower or Crunch. All of the bad things end up happening. The Vileplume paralyzes me, then the Gengar inflicts Curse, and the Murkrow of all of her Pokemon is the one that I choose to reset against because Moonlight is just not able to heal fast enough. If there was a berry that would restore your stats whenever you had your accuracy dropped, I think that this fight would be a lot easier to play around strategically, but generally I'm just looking for some kind of good luck. In this case, the Umbreon misses Sand Attack because of the AI debuff, and I knock it out for free. From there, Ice Punch one-hits the Vileplume so I don't get hit by Paralysis, and then when Gengar uses Curse, I've already attacked it, so I don't take any damage that turn. This trivializes the following Murkrow, and I make it to the Houndoom with full health. Clefable is faster, Return hits, and with that, Karen is defeated. I expect that Granbull is going to perform a lot better throughout the league, so of course it starts things off with one less speed than Will's Xatu. Because of this, it gets confused right away, hits itself a bunch, and has a quick reset. After how poorly Ursaring did against Red, I really didn't want to use my rare candies here, so I went into the fight again knowing that the Xatu was going to move first. Also, to save time, I didn't pick up the Bitter Berry at the beginning of the game, so I have no way to counteract the confusion. That said, Xatu just uses Psychic, and because of that, I knock it out. But Granbull is not out of the woods yet, because Jinx is next and it knows Lovely Kiss. But it misses and I knock it out. Alright, this is the luck I needed. Executor's next, return one-shots. Okay, that is a bit of a surprise. Slowbro almost gets one shot, surviving with the tiniest amount of health. It just sets up Curse and goes down on the next turn, and then finally Will's last Xatu comes in. Okay, is Confuse Ray gonna mess me up again? And the answer is no. Granbull uses Return, and with that, it has defeated Will. Granbull has less problems against Koga because he's able to one-shot the Muck with Return, so only the Crobat is able to get a move in. In this case, it chooses Double Team, but Granbull still hits and knocks it out. Okay, before Bruno, I do think I should use my rare candies just to be on the safe side. This way, Granbull will one-hit all three of the first Pokemon, again taking chip damage from Hitmonchan's Mach Punch. There's nothing I can do about that. Now, let's see how much Return does to the Machamp. And in this case, it's enough to one-hit. But will this powerful normal type have the damage it takes to take out one of the most defensive Pokemon in the game, Karen's Umbreon? And the answer is yes. As a result, I'm not going to get hit by a Sand Attack in this fight, but I am going to fail to knock out the Vileplume because I used Ice Punch. I really should have just kept using Return. This could spiral out of control and cause a loss if the Gengar uses Destiny Bond because I'm slower than it, but it doesn't, instead choosing Curse, and Shadow Ball knocks it out. Okay, Murkrow's next. It deals chip damage and then goes down, and now it's time for the Houndoom. Flamethrower takes Granbull down to orange health, Return hits, and that's it. It's now time to take on the champion, Lance. For this fight, I've taught Granbull Thunder Punch just so it can one-hit the first Gyarados. After that, I'm going to be relying on Ice Punch with the Nevermelt Ice to have enough damage against the Dragonites. Despite Granbull's low special attack, it still does enough damage, and I finish off the first two of them and move on to the Aerodactyl. In this case, because of super effective damage, Ice Punch is going to continue doing more damage, so I use it to knock the Rock Flying type out. Next is Charizard, Return takes care of it, and Ice Punch finishes off his ace Dragonite. Granbull finishes the league with an incredible time of 55 minutes and 49 seconds, with only 2 resets at level 63. That said, Clefable is really not far behind because the battle is beginning at about the same time. In this case, Thunder Punch one-hits the Gyarados, and from there, Ice Punch just sweeps through his team until the Charizard. Because of Clefable's higher special attack, I chose Thunder Punch on the Charizard. It just barely doesn't get the one hit, but Flamethrower deals almost nothing. All that's left is his ace Dragonite, and of course Ice Punch does enough damage. So Clefable clocks in with a Lance split of 56 minutes and 11 seconds. This match is so close at this point. I do want to mention the fact though that Clefable has one more reset. That suggests to me that if Clefable and Granbull both had 0 resets, they might be exactly on pace with each other. Before heading to Kanto, I think we should talk about the Move Tutor. Pokemon Crystal is the first game that he was introduced to the series, and he's only available after you defeat Lance. He teaches your Pokemon one of 3 moves, either Flamethrower, Thunderbolt, or Ice Beam. Each one of them costs 4,000 coins, which is equivalent to 80,000 Pokédollars. If I've purchased vitamins earlier on into the playthrough. Generally, I don't have enough money to buy these now. That said, I don't think I want to waste time selling items, buying coins, and then purchasing these moves. After all, by the end of the game, Clefable is going to be relying on Curse and Return and Rest, all the standard Gen 2 stuff. If the Cantonian gym leaders were more of a threat, then maybe adding one of these moves would make sense, but in this case, I'm just going to go straight to Kanto and crush all of them with my current moveset. In the interest of saving time, because my videos are generally not very short, I'm just going to say that Clefable and Granbull both smash every single Cantonian gym leader until blue without issue. So with Clefable, let's pick things up here when he sends in his Pidgeot. I use Ice Punch, and it just barely doesn't one-hit. Pidgeot reflects it back at me with Mirror Move, getting a crit along the way. I'm fine with that, I'm just glad it didn't freeze. Next is Alakazam, and I immediately noticed that my Clefable has 149 speed, which is one more than the fast Psychic type. So with Return, I'm able to one-shot it, taking no damage, using the leftovers to heal to full before the Rhydon. If you're confused why a Clefable is moving faster than an Alakazam, badge boosts and stat experience. That's the answer. Rhydon is a one-hit, as well as the following Gyarados, and then the Executor takes 2 hits with Ice Punch, but it doesn't do anything because it tries to use Solar Beam. Last is his ace, Arcanine. I use Return, doing more than half. It hits with Flamethrower, which does about a quarter, and that is a good example of Clefable's decent special defense, which is going to help it out immediately because coming up next is Red. My moveset for this fight is Return, Curse, Moonlight, and Protect. The last of these moves is one that I'm only just starting to really utilize to its full potential. Its primary function is to stop the Pikachu from using Charm, which I completely forgot about in this battle. It's not great. Its second function is to stall the opponent out and accumulate more health with leftovers. My strategy for this fight was to set up on the Pikachu because it's fairly weak, plus Thunder likes to miss, and eventually it'll run out of PP for it and then have to use Thunderbolt or Quick Attack. With a Pokemon like Granbull, whose special defense is lower, this might not be possible, but for Clefable it should be fine. The only potential loss condition here is if the Pikachu gets a critical hit with Thunder when I'm on low health, or if it paralyzes and then the status condition messes me up too many times in a row. But neither of those happened today. I finished the Pikachu off using Return and move on to the Espeon. I use Protect to gain back a little bit of health before tanking a Psychic and knocking the Psychic type out. Okay, time for the Snorlax. Now, I set up with Curse, so this thing's gonna do very little damage to me whenever it chooses to use Body Slam. I Protect, gaining some health. It goes for Amnesia. Okay, that's not ideal. And then in order to heal before the special attackers that come next, I choose Moonlight, but Snorlax crits with Body Slam and Clefable faints. There is a flaw with my overall strategy in this run. As soon as Pikachu's Thunder paralyzes Clefable, I realized that I had no way to cure the status condition. As a result, Clefable won't be able to move 1/4 of its turns. Because this was a community event and I was currently in first place, I decided to play the battle out and just see how it would go. This time, even with the status condition, Clefable is able to defeat the Snorlax and move on to Venusaur. It sets up Sunny Day before going down to a single return, but then Charizard comes in and it hits quite hard with Flamethrower, doing about half. But I think that means Clefable wins, unless +5 attack is just barely not enough to give it the one hit with Return on the Fire type. Oh yeah, that's because Espeon set up Reflect. And so Charizard hits again. Clefable just barely survives, but because of paralysis it can't move and Charizard gets the knockout. I tried one more time, really wanting to make the Moonlight flavor work, but it just isn't. I need to teach Clefable Rest. This makes setting up on the Pikachu just a little bit more sketchy, but overall it's going to make the fight more reliable because now when I do get paralyzed, I can heal the status condition and make it through the Snorlax to his final 3 Pokemon. Venusaur goes down to a single hit, the Charizard goes down to a single hit this time because I have +6, and all that's left is Blastoise. Because my health is high, it goes for Rain Dance, I use Return, and Clefable clocks in. Its first playthrough time is 1 hour 16 minutes and 50 seconds with 6 resets at level 75. By the way, a small error here with how I played this one. I forgot to record my root file, and then also my splits folder got deleted because of a programming error. So yeah, I don't actually know what its game time was for this playthrough. That's okay though, in Crystal version I never rank a Pokemon based on their first attempt results. This final time for Clefable is honestly fantastic, but what about Granbull in the late game? Well, let's see. Blue is first, and here against the Alakazam, you can see that it's gonna move first and hit with Psychic. Luckily it doesn't do that much damage and I knock it out. Ice Punch, even with my lower special attack, knocks the Rhydon out in one hit, and so does Thunder Punch against the Gyarados. Granbull has the added advantage that it's utilizing Shadow Ball, so the Executor is a one hit, and then the following Arcanine goes down to a single hit from return. I've seen a lot of people describe Granbull as Ursaring Light, and that really is true. Last year when I played both Snubbull and Teddiursa, it felt like Snubbull was just like Teddiursa but a little bit worse. So is Granbull gonna struggle with Red in the same way that Ursaring did? Well, I'm not able to move first against the Pikachu. Luckily it didn't go for Charm, and I hadn't even prepared for that because I don't have Protect. Next, the Espeon sets up Reflect, and then I knock it out over 2 turns, but Psychic did a lot, so I only have orange health left over for the Snorlax. Still, I'm faster than this thing, so I can set up with Curse before it hits me with Body Slam. I get a total of 2 in because Snorlax uses Amnesia on the first turn, and then I even go for a risky third one, and despite that, I am just barely able to survive, sneak a rest in, and heal to full. I didn't want to use Sleep Talk here, because I want to be awake when I knock the Snorlax out so that I can continue attacking against the Venusaur and the Charizard. So I wait until Granbull wakes up, use Return, and finish off the normal type. Venusaur is next, it sets up Sunny Day, I knock it out, Charizard comes in, Granbull survives Flamethrower, but it burns. I thought that the attack cut from this was going to prevent me from knocking the Charizard out, but it doesn't. Instead, the Blastoise just has enough damage to finish me off. Okay, that was a pretty painful loss. I think if I hadn't been burned, I would have had slightly more health, and then maybe I would have survived the hit from Blastoise. In the next fight, I make it past the Snorlax again, moving on to the Venusaur. Same thing happens here, it sets up the sun, and then Charizard hits me with Flamethrower. But this time, it doesn't burn, and I knock it out. Okay, I'm gonna survive the Blastoise's hit, I know that I can. However, this time, when it uses Blizzard, it gets a critical hit, and Granbull goes down again. So, I make it back to the Blastoise. Let's see, is the third time the charm? And the answer is yes. I barely survive with 9 hit points, hit Return, and Red's final Pokemon faints. Granbull clocks in with a final time of 1 hour 15 minutes and 34 seconds with 4 resets at level 74. This ending was really frustrating, but still Granbull was able to pull out a fantastic time, and it was just a little bit faster than Clefable overall. So we finished our first playthroughs, now let's get into the follow-up runs and talk about how I optimized these Pokemon. Over the last year in Crystal version, I have been wondering if I should turn off encounters on the first few routes of the game, just until the player gets access to repels. The reasoning behind this is that whenever the game generates an encounter, it has nothing to do with your lead Pokemon. That means this RNG that can slow the playthrough down is not dependent on the solo Pokemon, so removing it entirely is the best way to keep these runs comparable and fair. My goal with all follow-up playthroughs is to get accurate results so that we can get a sense for how these Pokemon really do stack up against each other. So going forward on Route 29, 30, 31, and 32, there will be no encounters generated by the game, unless the Pokemon I'm using needs those encounters in order to train. If that's the case, then I'll just turn the encounters off as soon as the Pokemon reaches its goal level. Now, let's talk about Granbull. In my first playthrough with it, I think it got kind of lucky, and I also didn't run into some problems that do exist for it. Let's go through my second playthrough now because this is really going to explain all of the hidden problems we didn't find in the first run. In the early game, I made a couple updates. Number 1, I backtracked to pick up the pink bow. This is to make Azalea Town just slightly easier. Plus, I'm gonna level up more so that by the time I'm facing Bugsy, I'm level 19. The reason I did this is so that I'll outspeed the rival's Bayleaf. I just don't want it to be moving first so that I can use Bite to cause flinches. For Bugsy, the best choice is to just spam Tackle. It will take his Scyther out in time so that Granbull doesn't faint. Against the rival, things are pretty self-explanatory. Use Bite. In this case, since I'm faster, I can use Bite for the Bayleaf to cause flinches and get by it with no resets. Before facing Whitney, I go to the national park and you'll notice that it is nighttime. That's because I'm trying to find a Psyduck. I mentioned before that I've stopped using Krabby as my HM user for water moves, and that's because Psyduck just performs this role so much better. It can learn Surf, Strength, Whirlpool, and Waterfall. This eliminates the need to catch the Krabby, as well as pick up the Good Rod and buy Great Balls. Plus, it also eliminates the need for me to pick up the Dratini, which is something I forget to do very often. By the way, thanks to Snowy for the tip that Psyduck spawns in the national park at night. Otherwise, I just wouldn't have gone with this HM user because I really don't like catching the Psyduck in Ilex Forest. Please comment about my pronunciation, I'm sure I got it wrong. Really examining the choice of Hidden Power Dark, I think it's probably not necessary for Granbull, just because it doesn't materially change the battle against the Gengar, and that is the most threatening Pokemon that Morty has. I didn't decide to change my mid-game because my damage ranges against Chuck are honestly fantastic. I one-hit the Primeape and I have a 2-hit on the Poliwrath. Plus, if Dynamic Punch hits Granbull, it only does between 51 and 61% damage. The next 3 gym leaders I have nothing to say for. They're all really easy for Granbull, so let's skip directly to the league. This is where my second playthrough took a turn for the worse. The fact that Will is just barely outspeeding Granbull with 3 of his Pokemon, those being the 2 Xatu and the Jinx, means that I'm going to get hit by a lot of status conditions, either Confuse Ray or Lovely Kiss, and sometimes a combination of both. I was stubborn here and paid the price because I have 4 resets in total against Will, which is honestly just unacceptable. He should never be this difficult, especially when using a powerhouse like Granbull. Eventually, I just decided to use 6 rare candies and boost myself up to level 57 so that I outspeed these 3 Pokemon and can easily take the victory. By the way, do note that I only had 6 rare candies instead of 7. That's because I skipped the Whirl Islands rare candy to save time. Using the rare candies before Will allows Granbull to be level 58 before Bruno, and 59 for the Machamp. Return does more than enough damage to consistently one-shot. I don't have the same guarantee on Karen's Umbreon, but an 88% chance to knock out is more than good enough. I'm making a small mistake here, not using Shadow Ball against the Gengar, but it doesn't end up being consequential. For both of these Pokemon, Lance is trivial, so now let's move on to Kanto, because some of the gym leaders here are actually a little bit scary for Granbull. The first one is Sabrina. Note that her Espeon has 113 speed and Granbull at level 63 has 112. This is one of the most unfortunate planning oversights. I never check damage ranges or speed calculations against Kanto gym leaders, so I just missed the fact that this fight could be challenging. And yeah, the Espeon can just stack up Sand Attack, giving time for her other Pokemon to dish out damage, and Granbull has not one, but 2 resets against her as a result. The other Cantonian gym leader that could defeat Granbull is Misty. Look at this speed comparison as well. I have 118 speed, and the Starmie has 120, allowing it to move first and use Confuse Ray. Luckily, I don't lose here, but I could have, and I really need to have a better plan so that she won't be problematic. That said, as I am winning this fight, please just look at the clock. Granbull is still getting a fantastic time, despite how bumpy everything has been. Blue is not problematic at all for either of these two, so now let's skip ahead to Red. Last time Granbull lost because of some awful critical hits, so is that going to happen again? Yeah, the answer is yes. The Snorlax crits me, the Espeon drops my special defense, which will not allow me to pass the Charizard and the Blastoise, the Pikachu inflicts paralysis, and Snorlax crits me again. Before having this experience, I wasn't sure if it was better to set up on the Pikachu with low special defense, or against the Snorlax where it feels like it should be more reliable. But this playthrough convinced me that I should be setting up on the Pikachu. After all, I can use Protect in combination with Curse to stall out for leftovers to gain back health. By doing that, I managed to get set up, knock the Pikachu out, finish the Espeon off taking minimal damage, and move on to the Snorlax. My goal here is to get by it with full health, and I do. So Venusaur is next, it sets up Sunny Day, I knock it out, Charizard hits with Flamethrower doing a massive amount of damage, but I heal a little bit with leftovers, and I could have gone for Protect to heal more, but I thought that I would survive the hit from Blastoise with the amount of health I had left over. And it turns out I was correct, it's using Blizzard because Sunny Day is on the field, that's why it's not using Surf. Granbull survives the hit, and with that it clocks in with a second playthrough time of 1 hour, 15 minutes and 38 seconds. That is 4 seconds slower than my first run. If you are like me, you should be completely unimpressed with this second playthrough, so yeah, of course I sat down and immediately did a third one, trying to correct all of these mistakes. And it's fairly self-explanatory what needs to happen. Instead of buying additional calcium in the department store, I'm going to invest in Carbos instead, which will fix all the small speed problems against the Cantonian gym leaders. I was too scared of using my rare candies early in the last playthrough. Instead, it just makes sense to use them right before Will so that he isn't an issue. Also, I will just note here, I am not using Hidden Power Dark in this run. I figured out that it was not useful and the time spent obtaining the TM was just bloat. These small changes get me by blue with a time under 1 hour and 6 minutes, and also Granbull has no resets. I'll be releasing a Patreon and members only exclusive video detailing every aspect of this third Granbull playthrough because honestly, I feel like I was playing near perfectly during this one and I'm very proud of it. But the big question is, how will Red go? And by alternating between Curse and Protect, I'm able to set up on the Pikachu fairly reliably. Even if it uses Charm multiple times and I'm not able to get all the way to a maxed out +6 attack, it's not going to matter that much just because Granbull has such ridiculous attack to start with. Also, I will note here that I got a little bit lucky because Pikachu did miss a critical Thunder. If it had got that off, I would have lost. But because it didn't, I'm able to knock it out, have full health to take on the Espeon. Because it sees that it can't knock me out with one Psychic, it chooses Reflect instead, but with only +4, Granbull can still knock it out. Granted, with Reflect on the field, I can't knock the Snorlax out in one hit. It gets a bit annoying using Rest, and then it hits a critical hit Snore, which does a lot of damage before I finally finish it off. Here's the thing though, the Venusaur now sees that I have lower health, so it tries for Solar Beam and doesn't set up for the Charizard. As a result, Flamethrower does much less. I easily survive the Blastoise's hit, knocking it out, and Granbull clocks in with a final time of 1 hour, 9 minutes and 33 seconds, with 0 resets at level 74. This is a game time of 4 hours and 32 minutes. These results are the best that I have ever achieved in Crystal version, so for a tier list placement, today Granbull takes the top spot. I'm sure in the very near future, Ursaring is going to unseat it just because I need to play that thing when encounters are turned off on the early routes. Plus, there are some other fantastic normal types that I think also might give it a run for its money. I'm looking at you, Kangaskhan, but that is a question for another video. For now, let's see how Clefable does. The key to the early game is keeping Sing until I defeat Whitney. This way I can break Fury Cutter and Rollout's combos. Unfortunately, I missed too many times today and Whitney does cause 1 reset, which was really frustrating, especially when we look at the final results. Just like Granbull, I did extra training with Clefable in the earliest portions of the game. This was specifically to get to level 23 to ensure that I had better damage ranges against the Miltank. At level 22, Clefable only has an 18.7% chance to knock the Miltank out in 3 hits, but it has a 95.7% chance at level 23. This is an excellent example of the powers of damage rounding. Unlike Granbull, who ended up relying on Bite throughout the mid-game to deal with Morty, Clefable is going to be using Hidden Power Dark. This is just far more consistent. Also, the optional training that I did pushed Clefable's level slightly higher, and as a result, if I use 1 rare candy in Morty's gym, I can bring it up to level 32. This allows it to outspeed his Gengar. By doing this, there is no way for Morty to defeat me because 2 uses of Hidden Power plus a Mint Berry guarantees the knockout on his ace. Clefable stacks up a little bit worse against Chuck. It has a 66.5% chance to one-hit the Primeape using Return, which has a base power of 78 at this time. After that, it can use Thunder Punch to two-hit the Poliwrath. I'm using this move specifically just in case I inflict Paralysis, which would lower the chance that it would hit with Dynamic Punch. But even if it does, that's only 48 to 58% damage. I had to choose between using the Mint Berry and the Bitter Berry for this fight. In retrospect, if I did these runs again, I think I might go for the Bitter Berry because it seems like Chuck really wants to use Dynamic Punch against my normal types. Now I mentioned Thunder Punch, and that's because I'm using all 3 elemental punches plus Return. It didn't really make any sense to hold on to Moonlight. After all, Rest is going to be the go-to option against Red. Clefable is slightly different during the league because it has higher base speed. It doesn't need to use its rare candies before either Will or Koga. This brings it to level 54 before Bruno, and I'm only going to use 4 rare candies now, so it's level 58 when I face the fighting type specialist. The only loss condition here is if I fail to one-hit the Machamp, I only have a 21% chance to do so, and then it crits with Cross Chop. If it doesn't crit, I'm just going to survive and knock it out anyways. These felt like good enough odds, so I didn't need to level up more. In this case, I get the favorable damage roll, and Machamp goes down. The fight against Karen is a little bit more volatile. This is primarily because Clefable has to two-hit the Umbreon. It's going to one-hit the Vileplume, the Murkrow, and the Houndoom, and the Gengar finally is a two-hit with any of the punches. You might wonder how much Shadow Ball would do, and if that would be a better choice against Gengar. In this case, yes, it does do more damage. It would one-hit the Gengar. However, there would be time spent teaching the move, and I just don't really think it's worth it. After all, one more turn in battle is not going to cause anything to go wrong with Clefable. The Gengar's just going to use Curse, and then I'll knock it out anyways. Plus, if I'm going to outspeed and one-hit the following 2 Pokemon, then the Curse that I'm afflicted with doesn't even matter. Clefable crushes Lance with a time of 54 minutes and 46 seconds, and now I'm off to Kanto. None of the gym leaders here are problematic. That said, something else is interesting about Clefable here. It needs to do very few trips to the Pokemon Center, if any. That's just because it has so much PP, utilizing these 4 moves. I continue utilizing them against Blue, who is extremely straightforward to defeat, and with that, I am now ready to face Red. Compared with Granbull, Clefable's higher special defense just makes it perform better here. And I was targeting a slightly lower level. I think I grabbed 1 extra rare candy late into the game, the one that's at Mount Silver, and I should have skipped it to save a little bit of time. In the end, Clefable is actually quite dominant against Red's team. I even finished this fight with Paralysis just because the Snorlax got it right before I knocked it out. And with that, Clefable clocks in with its final time of 1 hour, 11 minutes, and 48 seconds, with 1 reset at level 73. This is a game time of 4 hours and 35 minutes. Well, I thought that this was going to be its final playthrough. I was trying to rush to complete this video for Saturday, February 10th. After all, I had already missed 1 week of official releases due to tech problems. However, the more I sat with this project after completing the first take of the voiceover, the more I really felt like Clefable deserved a 3rd attempt to match Granbull's. So I sat down to try to refine things and improve its time even more. Initially, the idea was that in the early game, I can rely on metronome luck and probably get through Falkner at a significantly lower level, cutting a lot of optional battles. As I began filming these attempts, I want you to check this out. So I go for Metronome against the Rivals Chikorita, hoping for a one-hit, and of course Clefable selects Self-Destruct and knocks itself out. I restarted, made it back to the Bird Keepers in Falkner's gym. Check out my PP here. So I have no uses of Double Slap left, meaning I have to rely on Metronome unless I want to heal, but I didn't want to waste that time. Unfortunately though, Clefable uses Explosion and once again knocks itself out. In my following attempt, I make it to Falkner, which is fantastic. I put the Pidgeotto to sleep just so it's not dealing chip damage. Then I go for Metronome, choose Explosion, and Clefable faints for a 3rd time. I came back and tried this strategy again on the next day, and once again Clefable blows itself up, so I decided that this wasn't the best approach for the early game. Going back to the Pokemon Center doesn't bleed that much time, and then I can use Double Slap to defeat Falkner's birds, starting at at only level 8 and finishing the battle at level 10. Another problem I had with Clefable was that in Slowpoke Well, I would run out of double slap uses and then have to go back to the Pokemon Center, or I would just completely reset because I'm facing a Zubat and all I have is Mud Slap. Yeah, I didn't want a victory due to struggle to be a blemish on Clefable's results, so it just makes sense to restart the playthrough here. I thought that maybe giving Double Slap a bit more damage, grabbing the pink bow after Falkner would be a good idea. However, recording this portion of the voiceover, I have realized that if Double Slap is not doing a minimum amount of damage that can be multiplied to receive 1 more damage from the pink bow, then it isn't going to increase my damage at all. At least it will be useful once I get to Goldenrod City and I've obtained Headbutt. I made a few small changes to my mid-game, like not using a rare candy before Morty. After all, I want to cut optional rare candies from this run to save Clefable as much time as is possible. Outside of that though, there isn't anything noteworthy to go over, so let's move ahead to Koga. I really wish I didn't have to show you this fight. Clefable stomps his first 3 Pokemon, then fails to knock out the Muck. It goes for Minimize and I knock it out. Okay, so that's good. Crobat is his only Pokemon left, and I'm gonna 2-hit it no matter which move I choose. Ice Punch does a little bit more damage, and it has the chance to freeze, so this is my choice. Crobat set up 1 turn of Double Team, Koga uses a full restore, and then hits Clefable with Toxic. And after that first evasion boosting move, I miss a total of 6 times in a row, and toxic damage in combination with wing attack caused Clefable to have 1 reset. And this one was really frustrating. I assume there's no way that something like that is going to happen for a second time. Well, the Crobat poisons me, and it has used an evasion boosting move. However, this time Ice Punch hits, and I am able to defeat the second Elite Four member. Let's now make a major time jump ahead to where I'm approaching Mount Silver. On this route there is a rare candy, but to save Clefable time, I am not going to be picking it up because it doesn't need more levels. Even when cutting 3 rare candies, the one in the Whirl Islands, the one in Mount Mortar, and then this one here at the very end of the game, and cleaning up a whole bunch of other small things in my play along the way, Clefable is able to clock in with a final time of 1 hour, 10 minutes, and 9 seconds, with 1 reset that caused it to be over the 110 threshold at level 72, with a game time of 4 hours and 31 minutes. With these results, Clefable is able to just barely edge Ursaring out and earn itself the 2nd spot overall in my Crystal version tier list. At the beginning of the video, I told you this typing was good, and now we're starting to see that in the data because the top 3 spots in my tier list are all normal types. That being said, there are still a lot of fantastic normal types I have to do runs with. This is by no means an exhaustive list, but for example, Raticate, Furret, Kangaskhan, Tauros, Porygon 2, Lickitung, Miltank, and Dodrio. Over the next year, I think at least a few more normal types are going to find their way into the S tier. But not today or in the next Johto video, because I do need to give you some level of variety. That's it for this video. If you want to stick around, I'm going to talk about a few things going on behind the scenes which might interest you. There'll be a Valentine's Day special where I play Pokemon Emerald with only a Roselia, and believe me, this one is going to be a milestone Emerald video, so you definitely want to tune in for it. After that, I'll continue my rotation through the games, and we're going back to Fire Red on Saturday for the beginning of my regular releases. So throughout the rest of the year, you can expect a video every Saturday at 11 AM Mountain Time. Occasionally, for various reasons, I will release videos on other days of the week, but expect to always have one on Saturday. One of my yearly goals for the channel is to get better at streaming, and because of that, I will be streaming weekly, so every Thursday at 11 AM Mountain Time, you can expect to see me playing one of 3 games, Yellow, Crystal, or Emerald. Coming up this week, I will be re-ranking Vaporeon in Pokemon Yellow. Now, if you've been wondering where all of my videos have been over the last little while, I intentionally took all of January off, but then as I started production up, I was hit by so many technical difficulties. I had all of my files deleted, I had to recover them, which took 2 days. It was honestly anxiety-inducing, and I'm just glad that I got everything back. Outside of that, a lot of the custom software that I used to record these challenges just wasn't working quite perfectly enough, and so I had to spend some time doing development rather than filming runs, and that delayed all of my production. I think things have stabilized now, so thank you so much for your patience. I really appreciate it. And speaking of gratitude, I just want to say a huge thank you to everyone who supports me on Patreon or through YouTube memberships. The direct financial support has really given me ease of mind during this extremely stressful period. And now, if you've made it this far, you're incredible. I'll see you on Valentine's Day.